Oh yes, and welcome to Irish Football Fan TV with myself, Jared Brown, and delighted to be joined by Gary Sprain as we bring you our reaction to the Nations League draw for the 2022-2023 campaign. Ireland, of course, in League B, and they've been paired in a group with Scotland, our near neighbours, and then two long trips to Eastern Europe to Ukraine and Armenia. Of course, we are going live here as well, so don't be afraid to get any comments in or anything else like that, and we'll try and answer them over the duration of this broadcast. Gary, first thing first, as a touching there, a nice little trip across the pond to face Scotland. Should be an interesting one in Hampden. Maybe it could be Parkhead like the last time we played in a competitive game. But then two long distance trips into Europe to face Ukraine and Armenia.
Yeah, it'll definitely be Hampden. The only reason Parkhead was used the last time was Hampden was being redeveloped, so it'll definitely be Hampden for Scotland. Unless it's very, very unlikely they'll take it on the road. But I think Hampden 100%. Yeah, from trips wise, it's actually a fantastic draw. I think Ukraine will be a new country. It certainly is the first time we've ever played them, and it'll be a new country for most people. I was actually there in 2012. I went to the final of Euro 2012 in Kiev. That was my only time in Ukraine. I think quite a few fans have been there on their travels trying to get to Georgia or Azerbaijan in the past, but I haven't actually ended up did I? I'm just trying to remember. Did I go that way as well, going to Kazakhstan? I actually think I did, believe it or not. Now that I'm just thinking out loud, I went through Kiev, going to Kazakhstan, if I remember correctly. But I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be an amazing trip. I said it with Paul, actually. Ukraine wasn't too keen on drawing them from a football point of view because they will be very tough. They got to the quarterfinals of the Euros. They drew twice with France in qualifying. And they're playing Scotland in the playoffs, if I remember correctly, anyway, in Hampden in March. And they will be a tough enough nut to crack, but a fantastic draw from a trips point of view. I know Sligo fans went to Ukraine a few years ago in Europe and had an amazing time as well. I think they were in Poltava, if I remember rightly. But and Drogheda as well were in Kiev, going back as well. And so Ukraine will be an amazing trip. Armenia, you got to listen to people. I was in Armenia in 2010. I actually went back in 2019 as well for the under-19s. Yerevan is fantastic. It's an amazing trip. And I know everybody that went there in 2010 had a great time. So trip-wise, Yerevan is fantastic. And they should be very beatable as well. They pulled off a couple of surprises in the World Cup qualifying, but also struggled against Liechtenstein as well. So they should be very beatable. And then you've got Scotland. So local derby. Look, the Aviva is going to be packed for the home game. And I'm sure there's going to be loads of fans going over to Hampden. Probably in both our cases, it'll be easier to get tickets in the home end. So I suppose a lot of fans might end up doing swaps and things like that. But look, Scotland's a very good draw as well. From my perspective, I'm delighted to avoid Russia from the whole visa hassle, and Norway, Sweden, etc. would have been very, very expensive as well. So glad to have avoided those as well. And it is, I suppose, it's a very winnable group for Stephen Kenny. I don't think we'd be afraid of any of those teams, and a couple of great trips in there as well. No, what do you think?
Yeah, I think when you touch on some of the Scandinavian countries, I think it's not bad to avoid Sweden, even from a footballing kind of point of view, because they're quite strong. Norway will feel that they're, a bit of heartbreak after missing out on the World Cup, but they're on maybe to rise to something, obviously, with Haaland, even the likes of Martin Odegaard kind of rediscovering the potential that he showed as a young kid at Real Madrid. I think, as you kind of said there, yeah, it's got the kind of perfect balance and blend of footballing challenges. I think, as you say, Ukraine will be a tough one, but at the same time, I don't think we'll overly fear them all the same. To be brutally honest, I know they've done quite well at Euros and were impressive in qualifying for Euros. Scotland seem to be a team that are very much grabbing great momentum at the moment. They seem, I wouldn't say kind of unstoppable, but you just don't see where the next defeat is going to come from. Like, they will fancy their chances of getting to the World Cup. They've avoided the big dogs. The possibility of a local derby against Wales, I think, would certainly wet the juices there. And then Armenia, yeah, probably without being disrespectful, is probably the game that we are targeting 6 points. But you mentioned that they had an up and down World Cup qualifying campaign. They were top of it back. I know it was still early days in September, but they were top of a group that contained Germany. Now the Germans still powered away and won that group kind of comfortably. I suppose that kind of leads on perfect to a question that has come in the comments from Everything's Perfect. Where do we see ourselves finishing? What is the aim and ambition for Stephen Kennedy? Because, as great as we all talk about the winning of the group, let's achieve the first target. This is going to be our third Nations League campaign. And from the previous 10 games, we are still without a win.
Yeah, now look, our Nations League has been pretty much disastrous so far. So we will definitely, I think, get our first win. If we don't get our first win next year in the Nations League, but we will. So I'm not even going to go there. So I'd be quite optimistic that I think we've got a good chance. I'm not as convinced as you about Scotland. I think they're probably in or around on a par with us. I think they're very beatable. They could beat us. We could beat them. It's going to be local derbies. If anything, I think they're probably overachieving a little bit. And if they get to the World Cup, obviously it'll be amazing for them. But they weren't the worst. I would have been more concerned with facing Russia and Sweden, as you said. Sweden were probably the best team, I think, that we could have gotten part one. Ukraine probably the second best. But I think I've got to be optimistic here. I think we can win this group. And I think it's very important to go into this. I think we'll be taking the Nations League very seriously. And I think we will be trying to win the group. I think the days of talking about any more about blooding players and using it to experiment, they're gone now. This is a Nations League group. Our focus for next year will be to, if not win the group, is to finish as high up as possible. And I'd be very optimistic that we can challenge to win the group. And if we don't win it, we could come a very close second. I think realistically, Armenia won't be competing to win the group. It can be between ourselves, Scotland, and Ukraine. And but it's going to be very difficult to go to Kiev. I'm assuming it is in Kiev, by the way. I wouldn't be booking flights to Kiev tomorrow when
They
the
are
fixtures
direct
come
from
out.
Ryanair.
It's very tempting. Look, I might end up booking it myself if it's not too bad. But they do tend to switch to move the games around, and there is a good chance it could be in Lviv, whatever, which is just over the Polish border as well. So you really don't want to fly to Kiev if we're playing there. But yeah, the direct flights will be very tempting, and maybe it's a place to go for a few days. It'll be very cheap once you get there. But Armenia will definitely play in Yerevan. Scotland will play in Hamden, almost, I think, 99, 100%. Ukraine, they do tend to move games around, so I wouldn't be 100%. And of course, you have the other issue, the political issues with Russia at the moment as well, that there's a lot of Russian troops massed on the Ukrainian border at the moment. So God only knows what that situation will be like in 6 months. And I don't want to tempt fate, but well, we could be playing in a war zone. Anyway, we'll leave that one for the moment. But I'll probably end up booking the flight as well, especially if that Ryanair one is reasonable enough once the fixtures come out tomorrow morning. But I think we're well capable. This is going to be our focus. I mean, Scotland or Ukraine could well qualify for the World Cup next year. At least one of them is going to be in a playoff final. But our sole focus for 2022 is going to be the Nations League and doing well in it. And I'm optimistic with our recent run of form that we can challenge to win this group. And it's very, very important that we do well in the Nations League. If we win our group, we'll be second seeds in the draw for Euro 2024. If we don't win the group, unless we come a very, very good second and be the best second, we'll end up at least as third seed. And there is even a slight risk we could end up fourth seeds, but I don't see that scenario happening. But so it's very important we do well in the Nations League. Order of the fixtures will help as well. I mean, you probably away to Scotland in June won't be too bad, but it could get very hot in Armenia in particular, and possibly in Ukraine in June as well, although September will be warm enough too. but you'd hope those games would be on at night, etc. But yeah, I think we can do really well in it.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking to myself, logistically, with 4 games in June, ideally there's probably going to be 2 away games. You'd probably like that to be Ukraine and Armenia just for travel reasons to make it easier, to go for both games. But you touched on, I remember that game against Armenia on the trap. That was in September. You were there. It was disgustingly warm. I think Kevin Doyle described before on the channel. So just imagine what it could be like in the height of summer there. And I think overall, in general, yeah, I think like we've got to the stage now. It's no more blooding in. I think as we've seen for the latter end of that last campaign, all them players, if they're fit and available and all going well, that's kind of the team that needs to be kind of settled and going well. And this is another chance for them to kind of kick on. And I think as well, particularly the Scotland and Ukraine games, and I don't want to be disrespectful to Armenia, maybe we should include them. There's a reason why they're in League B. It's a chance to really kind of test ourselves in terms of how we're kind of coming along, because the view was maybe up until the Luxembourg game or even the Azerbaijan away game, we could compete well and perform well in games with low expectation, but we're expected to kind of win the games. We kind of seem to flatter to deceive. We kind of seem to eliminate that bud a little bit, or that notion towards the end of the campaign. Now all these games, particularly Scotland and Ukraine, will be clashed as 50-50 games. So let's kind of see how we deal when we, going into a game that is, a flip of a coin. Loads of comments there flying in as well. Brian O'Donovan, I don't know if it's the RT news reporter based in America, kind of carries the same view as you, Gary. He's we can win. I expect us to win the group. Not quite sure if I carry that optimism, but I definitely think we'll be a lot closer to a points-wise than we have been the last 2 Nations League campaign. Robert Swanton has our group in mid. Yes, as we've touched on there, we've got Scotland, Ukraine and Armenia. And Jack, when does the competition start? To the best of my knowledge, and you'll probably back this up, Gary, it's a June 2022 start.
Yes, so there are 4 games in June. So it starts on June 2nd. So our first game will either be June 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. And our second game will be the 5th, 6th, or 7th. And then we have another game and then another game. So we have 4 games in June in a 2-week window, and then 2 in September. And just to be clear, we will definitely have 1 home and 1 away in September. And we will have 2 home and 2 away in June. The dream, I suppose, for most of the fans, I know everyone certainly what I'm hoping for is that we get, from a travel point of view, is that we get a Ukraine-Armenia double header on match day 2 and 3, because everyone is going to either be at home on match day 1 or match day 2 and away on match day 1 or 2 as well. So you could, if you're lucky, be away match day 2 and match day 3. And one of my friends in one of my WhatsApp chats has already priced, there's direct flights from Kiev to Yerevan for €40. I think they might go up a bit tomorrow if we end up on match day 2 and 3. Of course, what we could have is Ukraine away first, then a home game, and then Armenia away. So you could have a lot of traveling if it works out like that or whatever.
There'll be no problem to you, Gary.
So, well, I'll manage it anyway. I'll definitely make the games. But from a travel perspective, I'm obviously hoping we've got Armenia, Ukraine, in whatever order, in match day 2 and match day 3 in June. And you will have 3 days, 4 days possibly to get between them as well. So we'll have 2 home games as well in June. The season tickets are going on sale next month. But there will be no problem, I imagine, in buying season tickets. The Scotland fixture will certainly be the attractive one from that perspective. But Ukraine home in Dublin will be a good game as well, a nice test. And as you say, we're pretty much evenly matched sides. So we can, we certainly can win the group. And I think that's what Stephen's going to be targeting, is definitely winning the group. And that would bring so much with it. If we can win the group, it's a guaranteed playoff if we need it for Euro 2024. And a guaranteed second seeding as well in the draw, which will make our qualification prospects a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, that's something Stephen has publicly come out and said. I think it was even after the Qatar friendly match. Must be 2 months ago now at this stage. So that is the goal. That is the aim, is to win that Nations League campaign and be coming out in top spot and guarantee the playoff in 9 months' time. I suppose just before we do finish up, Gary, we've mentioned and talked about that man, Stephen Kenny. There has been a lot of talk and debate all throughout his tenure, but the last while has been much more positive in terms of his longevity in terms of the Irish national football team. And it's been pretty much kind of confirmed the last kind of couple of days that he's going to be given the contract extension beyond, I think, what was just going to cover the first 4 Nations League games. I think it's pretty clear to see from the last couple of games, fans completely on board, massive upturn in performances, consistency, and form. That it was the most logical decision.
Yeah, I think John Fallon had it first in the Examiner. If I think so, he was one of the early ones anyway. That Stephen is getting a contract, I think, till the end of the Euro qualifying campaign, and which I think is the right decision. I think there was clearly an improvement in form, and now they're sorting out the break clauses. There may be something if the Nations League goes disastrously wrong, but hopefully that won't. But so I think it's the right decision. He will be the man, but it is important that we do well and to help himself. I mean, if we do well in the Nations League, it should guarantee a much easier draw. And one important thing on the playoffs, we got lucky. We got lucky in the playoff in the original Nations League that we got a playoff draw, even if it was an away playoff. That because there's 16 teams now in League A, if we do badly in this Nations League, so and I mean badly by finishing third behind Ukraine and Scotland, the chances are we won't get a playoff at this point then, because there's already 16 teams in League A. That would put another 8 teams in League B ahead of us, which is 24 teams, and we'd be looking at. Actually, that would mean we wouldn't. That would pretty much mean it would be very, very unlikely we'd get a playoff. They haven't decided the format fully yet, but to get a playoff, we would need to be at least, I think, runners up in our group. We'd want to be very, very, very lucky in third spot to get a playoff. That's my thinking at this stage, anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to. That was what permutations running through my head. Obviously, from the last Nations League campaign that fed into a Euro qualifiers, it was only 3 groups. Whereas now, as you mentioned, it's gone up to 4 groups in each league. So yeah, it's good to kind of know the permutations that even if we end up finishing second, while obviously won't be the goal, that likelihood is that we still probably will fall back on a playoff spot, given the likelihood that most
I think
teams.
second. Yeah,
Yeah,
second is pretty
uh,
much guaranteed because it was 12
yeah,
teams in League A the last time and then 12 in League B. So there was only 24 teams looking for 8 playoff spots. And you could be pretty sure you needed 16 of those 24 to qualify. But now there's 16 in League A, there's 16 in League B. So there's 32 teams looking for either qualifying or 8 playoff spots between League A and League B. So you can only have 20 qualify anyway. So, and then it hasn't been decided yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if the League D teams are guaranteed a playoff and may well bump up to League. So the League D, the 2 League D winners will probably be guaranteed playoff spots or first divs if League A, which they will obviously, if the League A winners qualify. So from a League B perspective, yeah, if we win it, we're guaranteed a playoff. You can probably assume 1, 2, maybe 3 of the League B winners do qualify directly. So runners up, yeah, you'd probably be okay. But once you're falling down into third place, and I mean, I'm not even contemplating finishing fourth because finishing behind Armenia would just be a total disaster. But finishing third, you would need to be maybe the best third. You'd need a bit of luck to get a playoff from that perspective. But hopefully we won't need a playoff. Hopefully we'll
yeah,
qualify directly from our group for Euro 2024. But it's good to have the playoff in your back pocket.
yeah. As you said, like if we win this group, we're going to be guaranteed a playoff. Is there a likelihood we could be bumped up to second seed for the draw then, or we
Yes.
still look at?
So
Okay, so
no, if
even
we if
better then.
yeah, so they just explained the seeding for the draw. The top 10 teams in League A will be number 1 seeds. The next 6 in League A will be second seeds, and the 4 group
4
winners.
winners.
And you also have Germany in the mix, who will most likely qualify as hosts. So it'll be 10 plus 5. So it'll be one of the best runner up in League B will also be a second seed. The rest of League B, so that's 5 teams out of the 16 in League B. The next 10 will be third seeds. So likelihood is if you don't win the group, you'll be a third seed. And one of the relegated teams will be a fourth seed. Now, you got to expect that Armenia will be relegated from our group. I think that, look, we should be well capable of taking hopefully 6 points from. We're going to need to take 6 points from Armenia, but worst case,
100%.
take 4 anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And just one last thing, just in terms of a bit of a trivia kind of questions for yourself, because I was just briefly after I seen the draw, I was kind of rattling my head. I know we've had Scotland as recently as the Euro 2016 qualifiers. Armenia was the last Euro qualifying campaign before that for 2012. Maybe that's an omen. The last two times we faced them, with the last two times we qualified for major tournaments. But I can't seem to remember the last time we came up against Ukraine. I'm sure this is one you'll be able to answer for myself and anyone else.
At senior men's level, we've never faced Ukraine. Obviously, we
All
had a
right,
bit of a disaster at the women's side, but
that's right. This time last
yeah,
year,
in
yeah.
qualifying, unfortunately, and they'll still have nightmares about that game in Kiev. But our senior men have never played Ukraine, so it will be a first ever international. There were only, I think, of the UEFA 55, it was only Ukraine, Slovenia, and is it Ukraine, Slovenia, and Kosovo we've never met. Uh, I think it's only those three, but certainly we've never played Ukraine, and we still haven't played Slovenia, and obviously Kosovo. I'm not sure if there's another one in the 55 that we haven't met at any stage, friendly or competitive. We played Belarus in that friendly in Cork. People may remember. I think we've pretty much played the rest of the 55, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Maybe somebody can correct me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure the only three of the UEFA 55 we haven't never met are Ukraine, Slovenia, and Kosovo. And we're obviously going to play Ukraine next year. And I suppose there's still time to fit in friendlies against Slovenia and Kosovo as well.
We could have actually drawn Slovenia in this group, and of course,
We could, yeah.
Kosovo are only a new nation. One kind of maybe a bit of a trick one you could say is we've never faced North Macedonia. We faced them when they were Macedonia, not more
Okay.
North
Yeah,
Macedonia.
but
But
it
I think
is the same. It's the same. It's a
that is
name
really,
change. Yeah.
really, really stretching it. But
That's
that's I
just
think
a
we're going
name
to call it.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I think we're going to call it a wrap for today. Thanks very much for Gary for the reaction for the draw, and of course some tasty games to look forward to now in 2022. As Gary said, the season tickets for the new year, for the new season, going on sale next month, and some cracking games to look forward to there. Like I said, Scotland and Ukraine are two mouth-watering prospects, and Armenia a good chance as well, hopefully, to get a couple of wins there. And as we mentioned, maybe your summer holidays could be now taken care of with that draw next June. Gary, thanks very much for joining me on the channel this evening, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon.
Cheers, Jared. Yeah.
And thanks for all the listeners who tuned in, and thanks for everyone who got your comments in there. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, guys.